What up, everybody? You're now tuned into the true definition of a sports fanatic. I'm your host, Brandon Lampley. Feeling good on this Thursday in Jacksonville, Florida. Been working on my diet, cutting out sodas, drinking more water, and cutting out fast food, which is incredibly hard. And I wanted some Chick-fil-A today, and I just got sad looking at somebody walk past me at work with the bag and the drink. But if you hear any rumblings during the broadcast, just ignore that. Those are hunger pains. Well, we have a lot of topics to get into today. We're going to talk about the NCAA Final Four. Congratulations to the Virginia Cavaliers on winning their first NCAA men's basketball championship in school history. Talk about Nick Saban, Leonard Fournette, some Antonio Brown, who had an absolute meltdown on Twitter. Definitely talk about Aaron Rogers. And then we get into some NBA playoffs. Talk about the first round matchups. They start Saturday. And we have to talk about the Lakers and Magic Johnson stepping down. But first things first, we're going to talk about the NCAA and the controversial call towards the end of overtime. Now, I don't think they got it right. I think it was a bad call. It was about a minute left in the game, and Texas Tech was up 75-73. And the Virginia defenders swatted the ball out of a Texas Tech player's hands. And they went back and reviewed it in replay and determined that the ball last touched the pinky of the ball handler, which was Texas Tech. And dude, I just don't see it. I mean, from some angles, it looked like maybe it did. Other angles, it looked like it didn't. I think it was a terrible call. I mean, replay has somewhat improved the game, but it has also it slowed the game down, and I think it's made it worse because it makes the refs look bad at times. But all in all, I mean, the most exciting thing about that game was the controversial call and the end of regulation. Other than that, man, I have to be honest with you, I fell asleep on the game. I did. I watched the first half. And yeah, after that, I pretty much fell asleep because, dude, Texas Tech couldn't hit anything from the field for like the first 7 minutes of the game. And then, of course, the senior guard, Brandon Francis, came in off the bench and started lighting it up, and kind of, woke me up a little bit for that first half. And I watched the first half, but I fell asleep. Now, of course, the next day I watched it in its entirety and saw the controversial call and all. But, man, it was not a marquee matchup. Now, if this was Kentucky versus Duke, now that'd get your blood going. Or shoot, even Auburn versus Duke would have got me something. Anybody versus Duke, I mean, because Duke is so hated, kind of like Alabama, kind of like the Patriots. Them versus anybody would have been a better matchup. And, of course, Zion Williamson. People want to see Zion. I wanted to see Zion. I mean, Zion, he's going to be an NBA player next year. And he's already up there with one of my favorite basketball players currently. But back to Virginia and Texas Tech. I mean, that style of play I don't like that style of play in basketball. Now, on the flip side of that, in football, I will watch a game between the Jaguars and the Titans, and it ends up 9-6. Or when Jaguars played against the Indianapolis Colts and we beat them 6-0. I watch every minute of that game because I love defense. But in basketball, not so much. I need you dunking on people. I need to see threes, fast breaks. I mean, just defense, and people can't hit water if they fell out of a boat. That's not exciting. But once again, congratulations to the Virginia Cavaliers. Man, just them coming back from last year where they lost in the first round, the first number one seed to ever lose to a 16 seed. The number one seeds were 135-0. No one had ever lost, and they were the first ones to lose. And coach even talked about it, their determination in getting back the next year and avenging their loss. And their head coach, Tony Bennett, talked about it. He said that, after their loss, they were disappointed, but he said the team was so focused and so determined to get back to the tournament. And I personally believe that had they not lost last year in the first round to UMBC, that they wouldn't have survived the tournament this year. I mean, they were down in the first round against Gardner-Webb, I know by as much as at least 12 points. I mean, it was 36-30 Gardner-Webb at the half. And it was basically deja vu, like, here we go again. We're getting ready to lose to a 16 seed once again. You know how bad that would have looked to lose to a 16 seed 2 years in a row? And it had never happened before that, which is why kudos is due to their head coach, Tony Bennett. He had these guys ready to play. They were mentally and physically tough. Congratulations to the Virginia Cavaliers. Now we're going to switch it up a bit, and we're going to talk about Nick Saban. You guys know I am Alabama till I die. It's Roll Tide all day over here. But that does not mean I will not be critical of Nick Saban, if I have to be. And he held a press conference because spring football is getting ready to kick off and they're getting ready to start spring practices. And, seemingly around this time of year, he always has something he has to get off his chest. And it's usually, sometimes funny, sometimes not. Sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong. But on this one, I think he was wrong, where he was criticizing players for leaving early to go to the NFL. And Nick Saban said, and quote, "Now we have guys that have no draft grades, 7th round grades, free agent grades, 5th round grades that are going out of the draft. And the person that loses in that is the player. If you're a 3rd round draft pick, and we had one last year, I'm not going to say any names, goes and starts for his team, so he's making 3rd round money, which is not great. He'd be the first guy taken at his position this year probably and make 15 to 18 million more. So the agent makes out, the club makes out, and now they've got a guy that's going to play for that kind of money for 3 more years. All right. And everybody out there saying, well, get to your next contract. Well, there's obviously 50% of these guys that are never getting to a next contract. And that doesn't mean the rest of them got to one either. End quote. Now, I don't know why he described it the way he did, because it was not hard to figure out who he was talking about. I mean, like as soon as he said it, people realized he was talking about the Jaguars' 3rd round pick from last year, rookie safety Ronnie Harrison. Ronnie started probably about 6 games left in the season. He was promoted to the starter full time after they cut Barry Church. And Ronnie played well. I mean, Ronnie's future is bright. But for Nick to call him out specifically, I think it's unfair, because Ronnie made, $400,000 this year. What other college athlete made $400,000 this year? None. And I mean, Nick, as old as Nick is, I mean, he's heard that, tomorrow's not promised. Got to strike while the iron is hot. And this comes off as just whining to me, because, I mean, look at college basketball. Those elite star players, those one and dones, you only get them for 1 year. You don't get them for long. You don't get a chance to develop them and be able to go back and get better every year. No, they're there 1 year and then they're gone. Nick, you get them for 3 years. I understand, you want to have players maximize their potential and their earnings, but going back to college isn't always the best thing either, because when you go back after, okay, let's say like Ronnie, he found out he probably had a 2nd round grade. He might go in the 2nd round and he fell to the 3rd round. So let's say Ronnie decides, okay, I don't like that 2nd round grade. I could be a 1st round pick and I'm going to go back to Alabama and ball out. Ronnie goes back to Alabama, and let's say he has an injury-riddled season, or he regresses, doesn't play well. Now, instead of him going high, he probably drops out of the 2nd round, and he drops to like the 4th or 5th round. What then? I mean, or he gets a career-ending injury. For a lot of guys, it ends in college. So for Nick, I think it's insensitive, and then for him to just single out one player, it was pretty bad. And of course, my man Ronnie Harrison responded on Twitter. He said, "Coaches get so butthurt nowadays about a kid making a decision to live out his dreams and go pro. Makes me think, do you really care about the success of the kid or how well your program performs? Hashtag keep my name out your mouth. Hashtag Bama. Hashtag Saban. Hashtag God got it." I mean, I like the response. Some people didn't like it because, saying he was being disrespectful to Nick Saban. And, a lot of fans, my Roll Tide community, some of them can be very obnoxious. Okay, well, majority of them can be very obnoxious, and they're Saban apologists and saying he was being disrespectful. But Ronnie could have went anywhere and been an NFL talent. So that right there, I don't want to hear. That doesn't matter to me. I mean, take, for example, none of those fans want to talk about Eddie Jackson. Eddie Jackson is a star safety for the Chicago Bears. Dude's one of the best safeties in the game right now. Eddie returned for his senior season and broke his leg, and he fell to the 4th round of the draft. He was a first-round talent. Now, if he hadn't broke his leg, maybe he'd go early second, but I think he would have went late first probably because Eddie was that talented. Dude broke his leg and lost millions of dollars. Now, looks like if he stays healthy, he'll get to that second contract and, recoup that money. But who's not to say that Eddie gets hurt next year and never plays another down of football? And Nick Saban could have came up with a better way to convey that message and did it without specifically calling a player out. I think that was uncalled for. But this is Nick Saban. It is who he is. He's pretty much old man yelling at cloud from time to time. It's what he does. He's very crotchety and seems to be a curmudgeon. I mean, even when dudes smile, it looks creepy. I think it was a 2016 national championship game, and the coaches posed with the trophy together and they smile. And Nick Saban's smile was just so incredibly creepy. Dude, I know there's video or pictures of that somewhere. You got to look that up. Now we're going to switch gears. We're going to stay on the topic of football. And the story that just popped up today, Jaguars running back Leonard Fournette was charged for a traffic violation. So he was charged with knowingly driving with a suspended, canceled, or revoked driver's license in Duval County on Thursday, per the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. The charge stems from a speeding citation from last November, which Fournette failed to pay. A speeding citation where he was driving 37 miles per hour in a 25 mile per hour zone on November 17, which carried a fine of $204. On Thursday, his charge came with a bond of $1,508, which I'm sure he bonded out pretty quickly, and said the Jacksonville Jaguars are aware of the situation involving running back Leonard Fournette and are continuing to gather more information, the team said in the statement. No further comment will be provided at this time. Now, so far, Leonard had of course, he had a disappointing season last year. I mean, I think he ran for like 439 yards, had another like 150 receiving. They had a total of 6 touchdowns. And for a fourth overall pick in the NFL draft, that's not getting it done. That's unacceptable. And, early in the year, when he came back from injury, there were rumblings about, his issues and, him being late to meetings and sleeping during meetings and, him being suspended his rookie year for missing the team photo, and him being suspended this year, this past season because in the Buffalo game, he threw a punch and got kicked out of the game. And the game we ended up losing and probably would have won had he not got kicked out of the game because he was absolutely killing the Buffalo Bills. But they voided the last last couple million on his contract, which is like $7 million in guarantees. They voided the guarantees. And, he still earned that money, but they can cut him now without repercussions. So far, Leonard seems to have been doing all the right things. I mean, I think he was in Wyoming and he was training, getting in shape. He looks good and doing and saying pretty much all the right things. Because last year, I mean, I follow him on pretty much all social media platforms, and dude's eating chicken wings, counting money on private jets. He had, different events with his number 7 iced out chain on. He's back home in Louisiana on a street corner throwing money in the air, which was incredibly irresponsible. But, that was Leonard. And, I like Leonard Fournette. He's a knucklehead, but I like Leonard. And Leonard is young. So hopefully, this woke him up. But, this right here is something that is what kids go through. He was saying he was driving knowingly on a suspended license. So, I mean, that's kid stuff, man. And now I'm sure he knows better going forward. He has to keep his nose clean. Now, the Jaguars, I'm sure they're going to talk to him about it, but this isn't nothing to be too alarmed about. And the fact that he's in Jacksonville, which I think workouts start Monday for the offseason, says good things about him and his dedication to this year. All in all, man, I don't think it's much of a big deal. Hopefully Leonard uses this as a teaching moment and he puts it in his rearview mirror and he's prepared to go for this season, because it's time to it's sink or swim for him. I mean, this year is a defining year in his career. I mean, you're getting paid millions of dollars to play a child's game, but don't get it twisted. This is a business, and it will chew you up and spit you out. You'll be back on the streets with everybody else. Now I'm going to switch it up a little bit again. We're staying in the NFL, and I have to talk about new Raiders wide receiver Antonio Brown and his meltdown on Twitter earlier this week. So one of the Pittsburgh fans tweeted at Antonio Brown and tweeted him a picture of Juju Smith-Schuster, who was voted the 2018 team MVP of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, for whatever reason, Antonio Brown had a problem with his teammates voting Juju team MVP last year. Don't know why. He had won it, I think, 4 years prior to that. If anything, him being voted team MVP should motivate you to come back harder the next year and win the award. But, that's just me. I have a hard hat and lunch pail, blue collar workers mentality. Very humble if you didn't know. But anyway, so he responded by saying that Juju Smith-Schuster fumbled the whole postseason away. He's talking about when they played the Saints late in the year and Pittsburgh is driving to go try to win the game, and Juju Smith-Schuster fumbled the football and gave it back to the Saints. And, Juju, of course, was inconsolable. He was crying. He was down. I mean, it happens. People make mistakes. Players are going to make mistakes from time to time. But what you don't do is let those mistakes define you. And, Juju seems like a good, smart kid. And he's going to have a really good year next year because he's going to be the top receiver for Pittsburgh now. But for Antonio to bring that up, I mean, it's so insensitive. It's so insensitive. And right before that, I think he tweeted out, "Keep your emotions off the internet." Dude, really? Who's more emotional than you right now? I mean, I was with Antonio when he was going at the organization and going at, my favorite player in all of history, Ben Roethlisberger. It's a joke, by the way. And I was with him up until that point. But now that you're going at Juju, I mean, I don't understand it. Now, we don't know what his relationship with Juju was behind the scenes. Don't know. I don't really care. But this make you look bad. And then, of course, Juju, he took the high road saying that he did nothing but support Antonio. And he was happy for Antonio when he got his money in Oakland. And Antonio felt the need to screenshot an old direct message on Instagram that Juju sent him when he was in college at USC about asking Antonio for tips and advice on how to be a better receiver and saying how he looked up to Antonio. And you try to expose him by putting that out there. That doesn't make Juju look bad. It makes me like Juju more because you went to somebody who's one of the top at his positions, one of the top people in the world at what he does, and you asked him for advice. I mean, how can it get any better than that? Now, this opens the door for fans and media alike to go and point fingers and say, "See, I told you Antonio Brown was the problem." That's what Ben Roethlisberger had to deal with all these years. He's emotional, he's self-centered, and he wasn't good for the team. He was a cancer in the locker room. But I am a true believer in that two things can be true. Antonio Brown could have been all of those things. And Ben Roethlisberger also can still be a terrible leader and an even more awful person. This doesn't absolve Ben of anything. But I know one thing, Antonio Brown better be prepared. He's putting a lot of pressure on himself and his team to perform. because one thing about it, I think he's going to succeed, as long as he stays healthy, because, people have said it, no one works harder. He's one of the hardest working players in the entire NFL. But you better stay healthy and y'all better win. Now, if I'm Antonio Brown's new team, I'm looking at him sideways right now, because to me, it sounds like he left his heart in Pittsburgh. Because if you're truly over a situation, if you're truly done, then you will have nothing further to say. There's no reason for you to get emotional and upset when a fan tweets you something from something in your past, your former team. There's no reason for you to even go at it like that. But that lets me know that he wanted to be in Pittsburgh. He did. He wanted to be in Pittsburgh, but he felt like he was disrespected. Felt like they probably wouldn't pay him what he got in Oakland, so he forced his way out of there. But I'm sure if Pittsburgh would agree to give him the contract that the Oakland Raiders gave him, he'd still probably be in Pittsburgh. There's no doubt about it, because Pittsburgh has done wonders for his brand. Now, Antonio most likely would have been successful wherever he went, but because of where he is, he's one of the most popular players in the entire league. And that's due to the fact that only two teams are really talked about more than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's the New England Patriots. And they have 6 championships, of course. And the mediocre Dallas Cowboys. I don't even know why they talk about them so much. You would think they won championships in the last 20 years. Newsflash, they haven't. Haven't even come close. Now, because of Antonio, the Raiders will be a major talking point going into training camp and to start the season. But, if they're just a middling squad, or they're one of the worst teams in the league, then that spotlight is going to go away fairly quickly. So they have to win in order to keep this up. But this just amazes me how grown people can be so drama-filled. I thought it got better as you got older, but I know people in their 50s and 60s and even 70s, man, some of the pettiest people on this planet. And, I always wondered why my grandmother used to watch the soap operas. She used to watch them day in and day out. It's like the only thing she watched, especially early in the day. And I always wondered, I'm like, man, this is so boring. But now I get it. That's what the NFL is, man. It's better than Desperate Housewives, Basketball Wives, Army Wives, whatever wives show you can think of, whatever reality show, which has a lot of scripted drama to it, whatever you can think of, it's better than that, because dude, he entertaining us now for free. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit, but we're going to stay in the NFL. We're going to head north for even more drama. Now, Bleacher Report magazine put out an article earlier this week called What Happened in Green Bay. It's by Tyler Dunn. It says a checked out coach, a tuned out QB, a soap opera where there should have been a dynasty, and those who saw the Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy wreckage up close say we didn't know the half of it. Now, you got to go read this article in its entirety on BleacherReport.com. It's a great article. Tyler Dunn did an amazing job. And, dude, this article was not good for Aaron Rodgers or Mike McCarthy. It really made both of them look bad. It's basically talking about their relationship and how Aaron Rodgers didn't like Mike McCarthy from the door. Now, this stems back to 2005 in the NFL draft where the San Francisco 49ers had the number 1 pick. And Mike McCarthy was the offensive coordinator at the time. And he lobbied for Alex Smith. And he said that Alex Smith was a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. Fast forward to 2006, Mike McCarthy becomes the head coach of Green Bay, who took Aaron Rodgers later on in that draft with the 27th pick. Now, supposedly he didn't like Mike McCarthy from the get-go because he's like, yo, you said Alex Smith was better than me, which is incredibly petty. It's just petty, man. You can't get really much more petty than that. The guy didn't like you. So what? Go out and show him you were better than Alex Smith, which you have done over the entirety of your career. But their relationship was, seemed like it was doomed to fail from the start. I mean, they won one Super Bowl together, which was in 2010, but they left some rings on the table. They, won one, but you can make an argument that they probably should have about 3 Super Bowls at the least, because, dude, those were some good teams in Green Bay. Now, granted, their defense did let them down a bunch of times in the playoffs. I mean, when your defense gives up 35 points a game and all your losses, I mean, there's really not much Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy could have done at that point. But basically, this article goes on to talk about, Mike McCarthy and how pretty much towards the end he was checked out, how Aaron Rodgers pretty much thought that Mike McCarthy had a low football IQ, which basically called him dumb. Like, he didn't know football. He didn't know how to call plays. It's enough people that vouch for Mike McCarthy and talk about his football savvy. And Aaron's one of those people who's incredibly smart. And if he thinks that, he's smarter than you, you're considered dumb to him, which is absolutely asinine. But, hey, that's what it is. But in Aaron's defense, when it comes to that somewhat, is in big games and in big moments, Mike McCarthy's offensive awareness, his play calling, I mean, it has came into question from time to time. But overall, I think Mike McCarthy was a good coach. And, I thought he would get another job this year. I think the Jets should have hired him. They shouldn't have hired Adam Gase. I think that was a terrible hire. But apparently Aaron had an issue with the way Mike McCarthy called plays. They said he constantly rolled his eyes. If he didn't like the play, a lot of times he threw the ball away because he didn't like the call. And to me, that's really self-sabotage on him. Now, in the article, it says that the CEO of the Packers, Mark Murphy, called Aaron Rodgers and told him, they've got their guy, their new head coach, they hired Matt LaFleur, and he told Aaron, don't you be the problem. I mean, that's really telling. I mean, if that's a private conversation had between the two of them. Somebody told out of the two of them about the conversation. How did the reporter know about the conversation? Somebody told. And for him to tell Aaron Rodgers, don't be the problem, speaks volumes about the situation. Now, Aaron has come out and he's responded to the article. He said that it's a smear attack and it's by mostly bitter and irrelevant players who are going against him. Now, first and foremost, you don't describe your peers and guys that you played with as bitter and irrelevant. That says a lot about Aaron right there. And you notice he didn't say it wasn't true. He just said they were bitter and they were irrelevant and it's a smear attack. I mean, which is pretty much the equivalent of saying something is fake news. And we all know who likes to call things fake news. But I digress. But just this shows Aaron Rodgers for who he is. I mean, to me, I was talking to a coworker of mine, and I basically told him, I was like, Aaron Rodgers is basically Ben Roethlisberger without the sexual assault charge. They're pretty much the same person. I mean, you self-centered, condescending, smug, thin-skinned, with little to no leadership skills. I mean, and look at the guys who he's talking about. You got Greg Jennings, a Super Bowl champion, and was one of the best at his position when he was playing. Jermichael Finley, Super Bowl champion, incredibly talented tight end whose career was really derailed by injury. Jeff Saturday, a Super Bowl champion and one of the top at his position when he played. And Donald Driver, one of the best wide receivers in Packers history. All these guys have had things to say about you. Former coaches, former officials, all of these guys have said the same thing. Now, I'm supposed to believe him. I'm supposed to believe Aaron. Oh, it's not true? No, because they could be bitter and they can be irrelevant. But are they lying? Are they not telling the truth? Now, one of the most vocal players coming out against Aaron Rodgers was Greg Jennings. He played 7 seasons in Green Bay and won a Super Bowl with them in 2010. Now, I've listened to a lot of things that Greg has said, and I believe him. I mean, a lot of people have corroborated his stories. Even Aaron has said that one of Greg's stories were true. And in this story, Greg Jennings talks about his last year in Green Bay as a contract year. In their first game of the season, Carlos Rogers comes up to him, joking with him like, man, why they got you running all these little squirrely routes? He's like, man, you know how it is. It's a contract year. Who knows what's going on? He said Aaron Rodgers listening to the conversation, and he says to Carlos Rogers, hey, maybe you guys should trade for him next year. Greg Jennings, he was like, he couldn't believe it. He was like, my guy tells somebody else from another team that they should trade for me. And he said that's where they're pretty much the falling out began with them. And I could understand that. I mean, this guy who I go out and fight for, I'm running across the middle of the field, about to get my head knocked off so I can catch a pass. Dude, and you go out and say something like that, I would be pissed off too. And before Greg Jennings came out and said anything publicly, he said he went to Green Bay. He talked to officials, talked to coaches, because he wanted a sit down with Aaron Rodgers to talk and hash things out before he said anything. And it never happened. Aaron, I guess, declined his request. Hey, and I'm like this. If I come to you and I tell you, say, hey, I want to hash things out, I want to sit down, so we could talk about certain things. You say, nah, I'm good. You go ahead about your business. Hey, anything you do after that, man, hey, this, it is what it is. Now, if Aaron had come out and took responsibility for, his actions, come out and said, hey, I haven't been the best person. I haven't been the best teammate, and I haven't been the best leader, but I'm taking steps to ensure that I'm a better version of myself going forward. And I apologize to anybody in the past that may have, felt slighted or felt hurt by my actions. He comes out and say that, I might have a totally different opinion about it. But for him to come out and say, oh, this is just a smear attack by bitter and irrelevant people. Dude, you sound like 45. And that dude spewed nonsense nonstop. It's like vomit and Tourette's. It just comes out of him. But now it's on you, Aaron. You got what you wanted. You got certain players out of the locker room. You got the coach out of there. Now it's on you. You're on the hot seat. I mean, for you to be one of the best throwers of the football that I have ever seen, you to have not won a championship in the last 10 years is unacceptable. And man, I can't wait for this 2019 NFL football season. I mean, just the anticipation, the storylines, the drama, it's a big soap opera, man. I told you, it's better than any show that's currently on TV. Football is king. And once again, they're going to dominate the headlines. I mean, they haven't even had the draft yet. Workouts haven't even started. Training camp hasn't started. Preseason isn't even around the corner. And they're dominating headlines. Now, once again, we're going to switch gears. We're going to go to the NBA. And of course, I have to talk about Magic Johnson stepping down as president of basketball operations for the Los Angeles Lakers, which has came as a shock. I mean, I was sitting at home and I hadn't been on Twitter, for a couple hours. So I get on Twitter and I see all of these tweets about Magic Johnson and him quitting on the Lakers. And I just couldn't believe it, man. I researched it and made sure it was true. And I just couldn't believe it. He held a press conference for about 45 minutes. Where he talked about, he likes to be free. I mean, he didn't really know what entailed his new position and, things he had to learn, things he had to be there for. It's a grind. And in my personal opinion, I think, Magic just bit off a little more than he could chew. And we're talking about a man who has so many things going on. As older people would say, he had a lot of irons in the fire. I mean, the man is an ambassador to future, current, and former NBA players. I mean, and probably to just athletes in general. One of the most charismatic, people that people say you'll ever meet. He just lights up a room when he walks in. And he could not be himself in that role as a Lakers president. He had so many restrictions when it came to dealing with players from other teams. There's just certain things he couldn't do, certain things he couldn't say. Now, do I think that was all there is to it? Is case closed and end of story? No, definitely not. No way, no how. There's more to this story. No doubt about it. Now, the early rumblings I've heard is that there's been internal turmoil within the Lakers organization. And pretty much Magic wanted Rob Pelinka, the GM, he wanted him out of there. And part of that reason is supposedly is that Rob Pelinka doesn't have a good reputation around the NBA. He's a former super agent who's had some of the best stars in the game. And, he's had his bad blood between him and certain organizations during his time as an agent. So now that he's a GM, it's other teams and other organizations that don't want to deal with him at all. And they're not returning his phone calls. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure it's very hard to wheel and deal and to do business if other franchises won't listen to you. Another reason Magic probably stepped down is because he didn't want to fire the Lakers head coach, Luke Walton. And the relationship that Luke Walton has with Jeannie Buss, supposedly he's like a son to Jeannie, and she loves Luke Walton. And Magic didn't want to have to fire him. Now, I kind of don't believe that because Magic was given power to fire Luke. And if it was the best thing to do for the team, I believe he would have done it. But, the president, Jeannie Buss, she loves Luke, and supposedly he didn't want to fire Luke. Now, what this does is put immense pressure on Jeannie Buss to get this right, and the GM, Rob Pelinka, because it looks like he's going to be able to stay. And there's already, rumblings about Jeannie Buss being in over her head and her not being a basketball person. But Jeannie doesn't have to be a basketball savant in order for the Lakers to succeed. All she has to do is put the right people in place. And, with Magic, it was a swing and a miss. Now, this next hire is incredibly important. Now, if I'm Jeannie Buss, I'm all in on LeBron James. We have 3 years left to get this thing right and to bring a championship back to LA. So I'm sure sometime in the future, she's going to have a meeting with LeBron and his people. And she's going to ask LeBron probably flat out, who do you want? Who do you like? And now, supposedly, there's talk about Ty Lue coming to be the next head coach and bringing in David Griffin, the former GM of the Cavaliers when LeBron was in Cleveland. He won the title there with him, bringing him in as president of basketball operations. I like it. I'm all for it. Or even Juwan Howard, a former NBA player, bring him in as the head coach. Now, I've heard some media people talk about how, Magic quit on the Lakers and his reputation takes a hit. This is a bad look. He's supposed to be a businessman. He didn't handle himself accordingly. But I think personally, if he had failed as the Lakers president, then his reputation would have took a hit. But Magic recognized it. He's like, I'm not cut out for this. I can't do this. I can't be here. I have to be free. And he made a decision. And I respect him more for making that decision than to stick around and stink up the joint. Now, we're going to stay in the NBA, but we're going to talk about NBA playoffs that kick off Saturday. I'm excited for the NBA playoffs. Even though LeBron is not playing, still going to be some good matchups. And, of course, I'm watching to hopefully I'm wishing upon a star that Golden State goes down. But I know it's not happening. It's a race for second place. And with that said, let's take a look at the other matchups, and we'll see who's going to come out on top in the first round. Now, you have the Nets and the 76ers, and I got the 76ers winning that series. The Nets are going to give them all they can handle, especially if Joel Embiid doesn't play. Supposedly he has a knee issue, and some people think that, they think they're just hot dogging it and having the Nets prepare for them without Joel Embiid. But, we'll see. But I think the 76ers are going to win regardless. Magic and Raptors, that's easy. I mean, I love Orlando Magic. I grew up watching them with Shaq and Penny. They're the closest NBA team we have to us here in Jacksonville. But they're not beating the Raptors. Of course, Clippers, Warriors, that's Warriors all day. Spurs and Nuggets, interesting. That's very, very interesting. I don't trust the Nuggets. I don't. So I would not be surprised if the Spurs take this series goes 7 games. But I'm going to give the edge to the Nuggets because they're a more talented team. Pacers, Celtics. Pacers have been playing good basketball without Victor Oladipo, their star. they look good. I mean, they have a lot of guys and they spread the wealth, but the Celtics are just too strong. I mean, even though they're going through so much and it's a soap opera in that Celtics locker room right now, drama filled, they almost like the NFL, but Celtics will come out on top. Thunder and Trailblazers, that is going to be the matchup of the first round because CJ McCollum, Bradley Beal are going to go at Russell Westbrook and Paul George with all they got. I'm talking about all they got. They're going to be trading buckets this whole series. And this is going to be a good one. But I have the Thunder over the Trailblazers. Probably going to go 6 games. Then there's the Pistons versus the Bucks. Bucks all day. You got the what should be your 2019 MVP, Giannis leading the way. And the Pistons just don't have enough. In Milwaukee, they're probably going to win this one in the sweep. Then there's the Jazz versus the Rockets. That's going to be an interesting series too. But I got the Rockets. I got the Rockets in 5 games. There's no doubt that James Harden and Chris Paul will come up big and exercise some playoff demons for the both of them. Oh, before I forget, I want to congratulate Dwayne Wade and Dirk Nowitzki on long and illustrious careers in basketball. I mean, you couldn't have picked 2 guys that were more suited to be ambassadors of the game of basketball. And 2 guys who seem to be genuinely nice people. And their impact went beyond basketball for both. Dirk internationally and Dwayne Wade right here in the States. If you haven't seen the Dwayne Wade Budweiser commercial, please go and see it. I mean, and be prepared because it is a bit of a tearjerker. And also, if you haven't seen Dirk Nowitzki's last game and Charles Barkley talking about the first time he met Dirk Nowitzki, it's hilarious. And him congratulating Dirk on a great career. You have to go see it. Chuck is crazy. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of the podcast. It's the worst part of it because it's time for me to end it. I gotta go. I got other things to do. I got babies to kiss and women to catch. Please like and subscribe. Share this. Please share it. I'm trying to go global with this thing, y'all. I want to be an international icon. I'm trying to blow up your weight, and I need your help. And remember, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. Just search my name. Hey, send me a message. You know, something you want to hear, you want to debate, something you don't like, don't matter. I'm here. But until next time, I will talk to you guys later. Peace.